Hey, I'm really excited to actually welcome Naysawn from Wrapbook up. It's going to be common with Chris. He's an A16C backed company, but he's taking a different path to starting his company. So please bring Naysawn up.
Hey, Alex.
Hey, Naysawn, how's New York?
Good, man. We're all just in rooms these days, so
Oh, no, no, no,
retired from
no.
years.
My kids just ran in the room saying, "Oh, you're doing another live stream," and they said, "Can we stay?" I'm like, "No." Um, you know, Super excited you're here. I think you have a very interesting, deliberate path to being a founder. So I'd love to just
Sure.
go through those questions about your path and go about how you started Wrapbook, what Wrapbook does, and then we'll give some tips. So let's
Sure.
get to it. Why'd you study engineering at Mcgill? Let's go all the way back.
Oh, I don't know. Used to take part in robotics competitions as a kid. It seemed like engineering was the way that you built the future. So I naively signed up for electrical engineering at McGill and kind of discovered what engineering was in the process. Along the way, I discovered that software was actually really cool. I really didn't want to get into software. I built this image acquisition system as a part of an internship that would track a UAV in flight back before drones were a thing. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I should really pursue this. And so that's how I landed in software. It was relatively accidental.
So hardware's hard, software's fun, and then you leave school and you go to Microsoft. Why did you decide to go to Microsoft?
Out of college, I got a bunch of different job offers. Most of them were to write code. And I was like, I didn't really want to write code. And they offered me this product position, which at the time it was called a program manager, which just seemed like the coolest thing ever. It was like, oh, you can talk with people, you can craft out solutions, and other people actually build things, and you can just measure if they like it or not, and just seemed really awesome. So they also offered me the most. I thought this would be an entry point to go and travel the world and like go and work in like other offices and all that. And then I got to Seattle and I realized that no, actually pretty much all their software development at the time was pretty much based in Redmond. So I made the best of the situation and really tried to make the best of Microsoft and learn a lot in the process. But yeah, you'll probably see a trend. A lot of things I've done, I've learned through doing.
Well, I think that's interesting because you're talking about learning through doing. Because I know you left Microsoft. So I guess when you were at Microsoft, did you know you want to start a company at that point?
I did. I really felt I was in this huge bureaucratic organization, and I knew I wanted to do something smaller. So I left. I was super scared to do it. My brother always reminds me of this, that I'm one of the few people I know that have quit his job and then went back and asked for his job back a weekend later. So I was terrified of it, and I did that, and then a year later I finally left. And I wanted to travel and learn how to do companies, and it was just really this passion of mine that was really obsessed with just doing things that like solve problems, and I wasn't really sure what it was. So I combined those two interests. I created my first company with this e-commerce service that connected artists in developing countries if people wanted to buy their work in the first world. And so I created a software service to connect them with a thing called ArtSumo that connected those two passions.
So before we get to ArtSumo,
Sure.
Hold on. Did I hear that correctly? You quit Microsoft and got your job back the next day.
Yeah. I mean, to my boss's credit, he actually hired somebody else, and so they somehow they put that on pause, and they let me have it back. I mean, there wasn't any issues. They didn't have any issues with me. I just wanted to leave. So they're a great company, actually, great company from the inside. They really treat their people really well. And I left, and then maybe about 3-4 days later, I asked, hey, what if we reconsider that? Basically, I had a friend that convinced me and said, well, look, I want to quit, and I'm going to build this, I'm going to code this up. And he was like, look, why don't you just go on Upwork and hire some developers to do this, and you can take your salary and funnel your money into developer salaries that'll build out your thing, and you can test it and get some really sound logic. So I went and proceeded to do that, and then proceeded not to actually do that because it's very hard to spend money when it's your own money. So that's how
we're going to come back to that in a bit, I think.
Yeah.
And so you eventually left, and I think is that when did you go with that first startup to Startup Chili, or
I mean, eventually I ended up in Chile. I was in Barcelona. I applied to Startup Chile, but I was really just really wanted to travel. I just felt like I was like stuck in this, I don't know, in this corporate headquarters that, so I started traveling a lot. I went to Israel. I'm a Baha'i, so I went on my Baha'i pilgrimage. And I was smart enough to go to Lebanon, thinking I could go to Lebanon and then go to Israel directly. It turns out you actually can't do that. You can't even, you were search on Kayak or something to go from Lebanon to Israel. It's like just nothing. So anyway, so I bounced around the world for about a year and a half. I ended up in Chile at one point, met a whole lot of great entrepreneurs over there. And yeah, they ran Art Sumo from over there and also had different art sourcers around the world. I was in Ghana for a little bit. So it wasn't always me sourcing art, but also found a whole network of people that would be sourcing really interesting art.
And was your goal through this period to focus on the startup, learn, or travel? Like, it sounds like you had a travel bug and you couldn't get it through Microsoft. So how'd you use to maximize the experience while learning?
I think I learned along the way that you can't really do it all at the same time. I think most people would realize, like, you can't really, if you're traveling around with a laptop with an internet connection, like, you're going to have maybe spotty Wi-Fi. I would work from these various cities for like a month or two at a time and then move on to the next one but I was like, I'd be sitting in like Istanbul, working on Art Sumo, like optimizing, I don't know, some conversion process. Cause I coded most of this up myself. And, on spotty internet connections, or I have customers that needed to call me, and it doesn't really work. So I kind of felt eventually that I wasn't really doing anything well. I wasn't really traveling well, because when I was in these places, I couldn't really experience the culture. I was just maybe on weekends, just kind of stressed out about a lot of different things. So I didn't feel like I was doing any of that well. I did see a lot of the world, which in hindsight, are really grateful for. But it was, yeah.
Yeah. And this company didn't work, and then you didn't go start Wrapbook right away.
No.
So
go ahead.
What was your thinking when you shut down this first company, or what did you want to accomplish? What were you looking for?
Yeah. So Art Sumo, it's interesting. It paid my bills. It really accomplished my goal. Like, money in the bank account from start to finish was the same. So I always viewed it as it was doing fine, but it wasn't a business that scaled in any way, shape, or form. I was sourcing art from all corners of the globe into a central hub to be shipped out all over the globe. And you can imagine, it's just a logistical nightmare, and something I'm also just really bad at. Like, I'm not good at logistics. Like, you ask me to like send a letter, it'll take me probably like 2 months for me to send it. Send an email, very good at it. So it was just really probably not the right business for me. In hindsight, I actually think that's an amazing idea. I think I have a question later on good startup idea. Please, somebody go do Art Sumo and do it well. Happy to chat with how
Should I be using NFTs for it?
Sorry, you say an FT?
No, NFTs, non-fungible tokens to sell art.
Maybe. I mean, really, people like digital art and original art, very different things. I tried that, but yeah, I would just do original art. So I left Art Sumo, decided to shut that down. I bounced around, tried a few different startup ideas, started one thing on learning in person. That was a big rage on like teaching courses. I started something else. I actually worked for another company. I worked for a nonprofit for a little while that was like a Kiva for education, a company called Vitana. But I really wanted to create a SaaS. Like, at the end of the day, like, the reason I didn't feel comfortable scaling Art Sumo is I just felt it didn't scale, and it wasn't something that was tailored to my own skill set. Along the way, I got pretty decent at interviewing customers and building software to solve problems, and felt like building a SaaS was really what I wanted to do. So I had some friends that had gone through Y Combinator. I met them in Startup Chile, and just when they got funding, one of my buddies, a good buddy, he called me and said, "Hey, you just went through a breakup. Like, why don't you come over and we'll hang out in New York and we can create this company together?" And I thought, like, okay, great. So I went to join this company called Regalia. They're now called Arcus. And I viewed it at the time as like a way to basically learn and really see how to build something at scale, like venture scale, and also learn just about a whole other industry. basically joined as a late stage co-founder. So yeah, I chose to do that to really get paid to basically learn how to start and run a startup.
So I want to unpack a few things. You had
Sure.
already at this time determined you wanted to start a SaaS business. Why SaaS?
Yeah, there's probably a lot of other businesses to create, right?
Yeah.
I'm not good at logistics. I'm decent at software. It felt like it was a good match for me. It also felt to me as, for anybody that's run a software business or even an e-commerce business, it's kind of magical when things are happening and you're sleeping, or things are, customers are talking about you, or that they're actually using their software to solve problems and you are not involved at all. And I was kind of amazed by that. It felt to me like it's something that just really scales really well. You can write it once and lots of people can use it. It's the magic of software. So I was really enamored with that.
And then what did you feel you had to learn on someone else's dime? So like what in particular did you see your shortfalls were or lack of knowledge?
Yeah. Why learn on somebody else's dime?
Or what in particular did you want to learn? Like, because you're joining another startup, so
yeah,
they've raised funding, so they're a bit ahead of you, but they're not. So like, what were you hoping to get out of that?
I mean, I was hoping to make the startup succeed. So it wasn't entirely just like, hey, let me learn. It was a good deal. It was like a late stage founder thing, and it was a great thing. It was like it had. It's interesting. You're talking about cross-border payments. I could talk your ear off about cross-border payments because that was really the vision of this company. Was really to enable mobile-first payments in the developing world, and we launched it to a phone-based system that you could send money credit for groceries in the developing world. Beautiful vision. People send remittances to put food on the table and pay the bills. We've created a platform to do that. Along the way, made a lot of learning that caused us to shift along the way. So yeah, the vision wasn't to just learn. It was really to try to help this company to succeed. And like anything in life, you learn a lot in doing it.
I figured you were trying to help the company succeed. I wasn't trying to imply that you were just there to get like your MBA or something like that.
Sure.
So Wrapbook, tell us what it does and how that came to be.
Yeah. So Wrapbook is given all this background that you just heard about, I'm going to describe your Wrapbook. How did this guy start this company? So Wrapbook is a service for production companies to onboard, pay, and coordinate their casting crew. Wrapbook came to be, I really feel like it's a culmination of 10 years of experience. At Microsoft, I had a decent amount of exposure to just interviewing customers. And the first thing that we built, it was really cool. I created this software product for manual software testing. Interesting industry, but it taught me a crazy amount because we would go to these software companies and we just sit behind these manual software testers and we just observe what they were doing day in and day out. And we talk to them, and eventually we'd see all these trends of these manual software testers with certain details on their persona, there's certain problems that they were dealing with day in and day out that they wouldn't necessarily describe, but eventually through seeing enough repeated patterns, you would say, okay, these are things that a software solution could do way better, and you could validate it with them, but like you could come up with your own understanding on things. And I felt like that's the best profile to really try to create a software product, is really don't scratch your own itch. Because I think you could definitely create a software problem that scratches your own itch, but so is everybody. And there's, for people that have software backgrounds, you have a certain exposure to certain problems. And there are so many other problems in the world that software could really help and assist with. But the people who have exposure to those problems don't have the technical abilities to solve those problems. So I felt that the best way to start a company would really to do a type of profile, like the same way that we did with manual software testers, only just in the industry that I knew nothing about. So it was really, when I left Wrapbook, I was really searching for problems, like in pain and repeating patterns, and stumbled into production. I didn't realize how much production happens in New York, but when I started counting it, I was like, oh, I probably know like 5-10 friends that actually work in production in some capacity. And, would talk with them, talk with whoever they would be willing to introduce me to, and eventually came to see the amount of pain in coordinating and working with strangers from project to project. and all kinds of crazy stories of how people would hack things together to make things work.
So let me understand this. Was this like casual conversations you just happened to have randomly, you saw the pattern, or was this a systematic approach saying, I'm going to go to my friends, hey, I have a lot on production, let me understand their business? Like, how'd you even know to double click on and find the friends that were in production?
I talked to a lot of people, talked to whoever would talk with me, and I got some exposure to it randomly from, I went and viewed a friend who's an actor, a good friend. He had an open mic at an acting co-working space, and I saw there was this one. It just so happened randomly. There was a bunch of actors that were doing a tech open house somehow at the same place where this guy was doing an open mic. And this one actor was showing me this app that she built, which was helping actors book gigs and just keep track of like different rehearsals and different auditions that were going on in town. And I looked at it and I was like, well, this is nothing impressive. And she told me she had like 4,000 paying users. And
wow,
like, well, that's interesting. And, it didn't seem like much. So that was like kind of the genesis of like the, double click on the idea and just talk with more and more people about it. But I investigated a lot of ideas. I investigated something around interviewing, investigated a few different things. And it was really, at the early stage, it's really hard to know, is this a good idea or not? And, just kept going with it.
So did you have confidence in the idea before you had co-founders, or you had co-founders helping you do an investigation? What came first? Because there's 4 of you that co-founded the company.
Yeah.
So were you doing customer development and you said, hey, I have a great idea, let's put together, like, did you need a team out first or the idea first? And
yeah, well, initially, I mean, Hisham and I, we met along the way at Arcus, and we really wanted to work together on something that would solve real problems. And that was our criteria for things. So Hisham and I just overall, we used to grab lunch every single day together for 4 years. So, there's a lot of trust that's built up over that time. And we really just wanted, I think, to work together. And so we were looking for something interesting to work on. We tried a few different things along the way. And this one seemed to resonate. I was kind of dismissive of it. And I remember sitting and having coffee with Hisham one time because he was trying to make so many different things work early on. He was working like other jobs and nights and weekends doing this while he had a kid, and it was just pretty crazy. And I was pretty dismissive of it, and he was like, "Oh no, that sounds interesting. We should build something there." Okay. So he was very encouraging.
And then, so what gave him confidence to try this? And like, when you went to try this, did you go raise money right away? So a few questions here. Like, you sounded interesting. So how did you know what product to start with? And then how do you go about funding this?
So initially our vision was to bootstrap this, was really to like, hey, let's build something that solves problems. Let's get to revenue positive. We can build enough. We're software people. We can figure this stuff out. That was a nice vision. Along the way, we built some things, and we prototyped a few different things. Eventually, when we brought on more people and we couldn't sell things in its current form, and when we finally decided to take on a payroll component, we got a few customers eventually. We got a couple of customers. We built up some things. We tried to show it to them, and most people kind of said like, they kind of shrugged. Eventually, we realized that there was some serious pain on the financial services side. We always knew there was some pain on the financial services side. I didn't really want to tackle the financial services side. I really didn't, because it was like, for anybody that's worked in fintech, it's nice, but when you're touching money and you're moving money, people seem to care about it a lot. So doing it right and reporting it right, and it's a heavy lift. So I didn't really want to do fintech. Eventually, when we did fintech, because there was the pain there, and we started with the customer pain, eventually realized we should really raise money for this, and this is a much larger vision. And then once we raised money on it, it was like, all right, well, it's got to be a big vision. Let's go and really, and along the way, honestly, I think we got lucky that like there's so much pain in the space, and there's so much, the industry is so broken. It's basically a manual industry that really, I think it's a venture-backed business. There's a lot of opportunity. That's why the company's doing really well. I think we got lucky that seed of something that we felt could be just revenue positive and we would never have to raise venture funds. We could maneuver it enough that it'd be a really happy venture-backed business that can be a platform for the whole industry.
So you have ties to Canada. I think you were originally trying to start the company in Canada. I believe one reason you're, multi-location right now is because raising money, right? So tell me what happened when you went to try to go raise money the first time, or how you went about it and what happened.
So we've definitely made some mistakes along the way. One of the things I think we've learned is don't prematurely optimize the company. We definitely tried to prematurely optimize the company. At one point, my wife and I were talking. We said, we want to really move to Montreal. Montreal would be great. I love Montreal. And so there was 3 of us at the time. We said, look, we're going to start this business in Montreal and everybody's going to go and move. And turns out nobody moved. So one of my co-founders, he moved to Toronto. Both Ali and I stayed in New York. We definitely didn't really know, but we knew we wanted to create something. It's just kind of interesting when I saw this in Chile with various startups that I was a part of, that just like everybody has this vision of like, look, I'd like to create a company, but often like life happens. And that can be, I remember I had one friend who, it was an interesting team. They had it was one American, one Canadian, and one guy from Russia. And they had all met in Thailand, and then they were hanging out in Chile. Anyway, one guy, he ended up becoming a father as a part of Startup Chile, and then they all decided to run the company in different corners. Anywho, along the way, we started in New York. Our vision was to be in Montreal. Hisham ended up moving to Toronto. So we said, okay, let's make this work. This is a great thing. And so it's been an enabler for the company, and it's a benefit. And it also it's challenging to have multiple entities.
And I'm sure it is. And so, but I guess when you first went to raise money, was it in Canada or the States, and what challenges do you face?
Initially, when we went to try to raise money, I don't think our barriers were based upon the business that we were in and investors' familiarity with our customers' problems, and also our attraction. So when we initially pitched the vision of Wrapbook, almost every investor was like, this isn't really a problem. There's established players in the market. I'm not really that familiar with it. How bad is it? I talked to a bunch of other people who have tried to do this in the past, and it never really worked. We didn't invest in any of those, and they didn't really go anywhere either. And we had to prove ourselves in order to have investors be interested, and kind of prove that there's a viable business here via building the business.
Yeah.
So nobody was really interested in investing. Initially, what we had to do is we put in some money ourselves, and friends and family. I had a friend from Google who wrote his first check blind, just off of a relationship. He likes to say this himself. I had no idea. And so, he just really was like, I'm investing in other random companies. I should probably invest in my friends' companies. So there was some investment like that. And eventually we started to make some money. And eventually we were able to just really extend our runway, like bit by bit by bit, until the point that, it's funny, by the time we almost really didn't need the money, that's when really our seed round closed. And our A was similar.
And when A16Z invested in that A round, what's the vision they're buying into? What were you selling them? Because it sounded like your vision got bigger and bigger as you got to know the industry better. So
I mean, initially it was a very good description. Initially, we saw that there was this pain point for production companies working with these strangers on a recurring basis. You can think when you have a job, you probably work that job a single time. For a whole year, 2 years, and you onboard once and you just keep on getting paid on a recurring basis. Workers in the project economy and production services, they're working with 5 different companies in a given week, or at least in a given month. and they're constantly onboarding, putting in information into some system, and they have no idea when they're actually getting paid. We came to see that that's a problem in production. It's also a problem in basically all of the project economy. There is a whole sector of the economy that is basically project-based, that people work recurringly in their job, but the person on paper who is paying them, their employer, changes on every single project. And we came to see that we could be the system of record for that whole project economy. So somebody who works on a construction site, they might work on 5 different buildings in a week. We came to see that we could be that service that really connects them with just working their job. We could be their login for work.
Cool. We got a question from Anjana who's asking, is Wrapbook a multi-country compliant or only the US? She's asking, well, there you go. She's asking because I'm curious to know how a payroll product team was struggling to build a multi-country payroll. So how do you address that?
The product service itself, we just do payroll in the US. You're right. It is a very hard problem doing compliant payroll in multiple countries. And we just focus on the US as far as the product servicing. We have payroll ourselves as employees in both Canada and the US, but as far as the product servicing, we just service the US.
Gonna change with one last question before we get into a lightning round with a few quick rapid questions. Last question: how important is your peer group? Like the people you surround yourself with in being a founder?
I think it's super important. Super important. People like to say you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So pick those 5 people wisely.
And I think in our, have you seen? Again, I'll do Canada versus the US comparison, or YC versus, Canada or New York. What's the difference you've seen and how's that impacted you?
Yeah, I've been fortunate to be surrounded gradually through a great network, who somehow along the way I've met really great people. And I try to keep in touch with them. And I find implicitly we all tend to compare ourselves to those people. I think, you tend to be like, well, if they're not that much smarter than me, why are they able to do this? Or if they're not, so it's good to hang out with people. If you want to work out, you should probably be hanging out with people that work out, because you're like, I don't know, these guys managed to get up at 5 a.m. and why am I asleep in bed? So I think it's really good to have that positive peer group as much as possible. As far as Canada and the US, I mean, there's really smart and great and capable people in both countries. And we've really tried to hire as many of them as possible. And I have great connections from Mcgill. A lot of my friends, they did great things. A lot of different people actually were startup founders. Chatting with a friend in France the other day who sold his company. It was like a Stripe for Europe. So they're, I've met a lot of great people along the way, and in the pandemic, try to keep in touch with as many as possible. I think you're trying to allude to like what is the difference as far as like Canadian versus American entrepreneurs. I have noticed that maybe it's because of access to capital. American entrepreneurs just tend to assume they'll raise funds, and as a result, have to just be a little bit more venture-backed ambitions to go with it, which means like, okay, how can I make this 1,000-person, 2,000-person, 5,000-person company? Which just forces one to be so much more ambitious, because that's the only thing that people want to invest in. And I think, unfortunately, there's just not the access to capital in Canada is just a little harder. So I think it's harder to have the same level of ambition.
Well, when you have the exit, you can help change that in like 5-6 years. I'm going to do a few quick questions. I'll start with the one Jason asked. Who are the 5 people you hang out with?
Oh, my wife, my son. I mean, these days, my co-founders, I hang out with them a lot. So Hisham, Ali, Cameron, hang out with them a lot. Spent a lot of time with Wrapbook employees and earlier stage co-founders, earlier stage employees. Sorry, yeah. But otherwise, no. Just I'm a Baha'i. I hang out in the Baha'i community a lot. I try to work out with one of my buddies who it's regimented 3 days a week, and he's constantly doing better than me as far as his workouts. So,
Cool. We all need a friend like that. So you're in production. What's your favorite movie and your favorite TV show?
Yeah, a lot of favorite TV shows. Favorite movie? I really love Wes Anderson. I think his probably between uh, probably between the Fantastic Mr. Fox and Rushmore, as I could cite them to be my favorite movies. But I really like almost anything that he does. Favorite TV show? I don't know. I watched Watchmen recently. If you haven't seen it, it's really great.
Haven't
It's
had
really,
the
I think they,
chance.
yeah,
I
they
want to see it.
really
I've heard good things.
fantastic.
What do you miss most from Montreal or McGill?
Mm. The bagels in Montreal are top notch.
So
New Yorkers will be like, oh, New York bagels, they're great. They're just these humongous monstrosities.
okay,
So it's definitely more than a meal.
yeah,
Bagels, I just miss also just Montreal in the summertime. Amazing place. Amazing place. There's so much energy in town. Everybody's really positive. It New York is a similar energy to Montreal that like you can walk down the street and just somehow find something so interesting every day. And I love that about the city.
but I know you're a new father.
Hmm.
Most surprising thing about being a new father.
Nobody told me. So every time you talk to new parents, they always tell you like, okay, like you're not going to sleep through the night. Like this is going to be crazy. Nobody told me about the joy of parenting. Really when you have a baby, it's at least my son. He puts out so much love, so much love. He can do these little things that just melt my heart entirely. He just does this little thing. He looks at me and goes, ooh. So it melts my heart. So
Um,
that's been the most enjoyable bit.
my favorite last question before well, two questions for you. The last one I want to have is what one company that doesn't exist that you would like to see exist? So if a founder was here was looking for inspiration or idea, and it doesn't have to be venture scale, but if someone was to say, okay, that could make your life better, you'd like to see exist, what would it be?
Yeah, I was thinking about this question, and if you want a venture scale idea, I think a better Google is really needed. I think Google has been SEO'd out up the wazoo. If I Google things, I'm actually really not that happy with the results. I think
Wow.
it's mostly people gaming the system. And I think somebody could do better. Google, when they launched, they weren't like that. So
Yeah,
I've been thinking about that a little bit.
I like that. Now, I know you just raised a big A round. You have a team in Toronto. What are you looking for your team? Like, do you have open positions?
We're trying to hire great people. Toronto has a wonderful Ruby community. We are looking for Rails developers. If you're a Rails developer, if you have friends that are Rails developer, we would love to talk with you. Feel free, if you don't want to fill out a job application, feel free to DM me on Twitter. We're also looking for great product people, people who are product managers, designers. Those are the crux of who we're hiring for. Really cool product, really cool customers that we're working with day in and day out. Think about all of entertainment production, every movie, photo shoot that you see. Wrapbook right now is touching it, and we're helping people to be more efficient in that space. So, would love
That's
to talk with you.
awesome. I hope we get a few applications. We hope people DM you. I think you're going to be. I hope you make help keep entertainment in business. I worry about the pandemic and Netflix basically killing movies and TV shows. But
Yeah.
you know,
Large scale entertainment production has been hard, and they've created these little bubbles and whatnot. But many of our clients are really small scale. They do a lot of small projects, and we've seen actually in LA it's a huge uptick ever since lockdowns ended. So I think it's actually going to be fairly positive, and hopefully a lot of them people will go back to work in larger scale
awesome.
production. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Naysawn.
Thanks,
It's a
Alex. It was a lot of fun.
pleasure having you. I had a great time.
Yeah, me too.